What if the sheriff you trusted turned against you? What if the gang you feared was only a shadow of something far darker? In Dry Creek, Emily, Ryder, and young Ben must face betrayal, fire, and secrets buried beneath Gray Mesa. But can courage alone hold back the dust of war? Stay until the end, because the truth revealed here will change everything. And tell me, what would you fight for if the whole town turned on you? Welcome to WestDreamTales, where the Wild West lives again. Here, every gunshot echoes with betrayal. Every dusty road hides a secret. If you crave stories of love, loss, and legends carved in blood and dust, you're in the right place. The market in Dry Creek was alive with sound. Merchants shouted prices. Children darted between wagons, and the air carried the scent of roasted corn and horse sweat. Emily kept close to Ryder, her shawl pulled tight against the dust, her eyes alert though her smile tried to stay gentle. Ryder walked with that guarded stance of his, hand never far from the worn revolver at his hip. He noticed how folks looked at Emily, some with respect, others with suspicion. The shadow of Silas Kane's death still lingered, and her courage that night was whispered both as legend and as warning. Emily felt the stares as if they were arrows. When a woman selling apples spat near her boots, she paused but said nothing. Ryder touched her elbow, a subtle gesture, guiding her away without a word. The brief contact steadied her, though her chest tightened. Ben scampered ahead, trying to lighten the air for his mother. He pointed at a stall of trinkets, his boyish grin masking the unease he sensed around them. "Mama, look, silver coins," he said, as if the market was still the safe haven it used to be. The illusion cracked in a heartbeat. 5 men slipped out from behind a wagon, their dusters marked with faded symbols Ryder recognized. The air changed, laughter thinned, footsteps faltered. Emily's hand froze near her shawl, while Ryder shifted his weight. "Ready." "Thought you left ghosts behind." "Ryder!" One of the men sneered, his scarred lip pulled into a smile that never reached his eyes. The crowd stepped back, forming a circle without meaning to. Silence pressed down, broken only by the creak of leather and the clink of spurs. Emily's pulse thundered. She remembered the night she pulled the trigger on Silas, the recoil, the smoke, the finality in his eyes. That memory gave her strength, even as fear clawed at her ribs. Her gaze held steady on the men, though her breath hitched. Ryder spoke low, almost a growl. "You're not desperados, not anymore." His eyes narrowed, recognizing the marks of the old gang, men who had once ridden with Silas Kane, now drifting, dangerous, untethered. The scarred man tipped his hat mockingly. "Names fade, debt doesn't." He shifted his coat, revealing the handle of his gun. The crowd whispered, retreating further into doorways and behind wagons. The market that had been filled with life now felt like a trap. Emily felt Ryder step slightly in front of her, but she moved too, close enough that her shoulder brushed his. The warmth of contact was brief, fragile, but it steadied both of them. Neither spoke. Their breaths mingled in the heat. Ben pressed against Emily's skirt, wide-eyed. "Mama," he whispered, his small voice too thin for the men to hear. Ryder tightened his jaw. He knew what came next, blood, or something worse. Before the guns were drawn, a shot cracked the sky. Dust exploded from the ground between the scarred man's boots. Everyone froze. The echo rolled across the market like thunder, scattering pigeons from the rooftops. A lone rider sat on a ridge of dust beyond the stalls. His hat shadowed his face, his rifle still smoking in his hands. He rode a dark bay horse, tall and restless, mane flicking in the wind. The crowd turned, murmurs rising like a tide. Emily's breath caught. Something in his posture, the way he carried himself, felt hauntingly familiar. Ryder's eyes narrowed, recognition dawning in the lines of his face. Memories he'd buried clawed their way back, raw and unwelcome. The rider lowered his rifle and raised his voice. "Leave them be," he said, words clear, sharp as cut stone, "or you'll answer to me." His tone carried no kindness, only command. The scarred man spat, frustrated, but signaled his men to pull back. They melted into the dust, their threat unfinished, their message clear. The market breathed again, though the air remained heavy. Ryder's hand hovered near his gun, but his attention stayed fixed on the stranger. Emily touched his arm gently, grounding him. She whispered, "Do you know him?" The question trembled between them, fragile as glass. The rider urged his horse closer, dust swirling around his boots as he dismounted. He looked directly at Ryder, ignoring the crowd, ignoring Emily. His gaze was iron, forged in history. "You thought Silas was your enemy," he said coldly. "But he was just one piece. You know that." Emily's heart skipped. The words felt like a blade sliding beneath the skin of certainty. Ryder's face hardened, his silence more dangerous than anger. Ben clutched tighter, sensing the shift none of them understood. The rider swung back into the saddle with effortless grace. He didn't wait for answers, didn't offer comfort. He only left a warning hanging in the dust, a shadow heavier than the gun smoke. Silas Kane was never the only one. And then he was gone, swallowed by the horizon, leaving Emily, Ryder, and the market caught between fear and questions that refused to fade. The dust of the market still clung to Emily's shawl long after they returned to the edge of town. Her fingers trembled as she drew it tighter, though she would never admit the weight pressing on her chest. Ryder walked beside her in silence, his jaw hard, his eyes lost somewhere beyond the horizon. Ben trotted close, glancing up at his mother as if searching for reassurance. She smoothed his hair with a faint smile, though the touch betrayed her unease. Ryder noticed but said nothing, his hand brushing the butt of his revolver, an old habit whenever ghosts stirred. That night, the streets of Dry Creek grew hushed. Lamps burned low, doors shut earlier than usual. Emily felt every eye that had followed her from the market, whispers swelling like a current she could not escape. She had shot Silas Kane dead, yet instead of gratitude, suspicion now shadowed her steps. At the saloon, voices carried through thin walls. "A woman like that," one man muttered, "puts down Silas with a single shot. Don't tell me she's not cold-blooded," another answered. "Or maybe she's worse. Maybe she planned it." The laughter that followed cut sharper than any knife. Emily's breath faltered. She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying herself in the darkened alley. Ryder found her there, his silhouette filling the narrow passage. He said nothing at first, only reached out and let his fingers graze her sleeve, a gesture meant to anchor her. She met his eyes, and in that silence, the doubt between them eased for a fleeting moment. But the night was restless. Ben, curious and restless, wandered near the stables. He paused when he heard low voices drifting from men hidden in the shadows. "The silver veins not played out," one whispered. "Gray Mesa still hides more." Silas barely scratched it. Another spat, and now his death leaves the claim wide open. Ben's eyes widened. He knew enough to realize he had stumbled onto something dangerous. Quiet as he could, he backed away, clutching the wooden beam of the stall until his fingers ached. He hurried back to Emily, his voice trembling as he whispered what he'd heard. Her heart chilled, though she forced a calm nod to keep from alarming him further. Ryder listened in silence when Emily repeated the boy's words. His gaze darkened, old memories stirring. "Gray Mesa," he muttered, the name heavy on his tongue. For Ryder, the mesa was not only land, but a wound one carved during the years he rode with the Iron Vultures. The Kisi from the market, the stranger who had fired the warning shot, was no true stranger. His name was Caleb Vance, once Ryder's closest brother in arms. Together, they had ridden under the banner of the Iron Vultures, a band feared for their ruthless raids. Caleb had left before Ryder turned away, vanishing like smoke. Now he was back, carrying shadows with him. Sleep offered no refuge. Ryder dreamed of blood on desert stone, of Caleb's laughter in the night, of choices that could never be undone. Emily stirred beside the hearth, watching him twist in restless silence. She wanted to reach out, to place her hand on his shoulder, but fear of his past held her back. Instead, she drew Ben close and whispered promises she barely believed. Morning broke harsh and clear. At the well in the town square, Emily drew water while women eyed her with tight mouths. Heroine one scoffed under her breath, more like a curse. Another nodded. A man dies where she walks. Emily kept her head high, but her knuckles whitened around the bucket's handle. Ryder approached then, his presence a shield. He took the weight of the bucket from her, his hand brushing hers briefly. The warmth of his touch lingered, steadying her just enough. Ben clung to Emily's skirt, his small eyes darting between the faces that judged them so harshly. That afternoon, Sheriff Clay's name surfaced in whispers. Some claimed he still lived, patched up and hiding, his allegiance shifting like wind over sand. Ryder clenched his fist when he heard Clay had once been law, but if he now rode with the Blackthorn Riders, the town was already doomed. At dusk, Ryder left Emily and Ben in their small home at the edge of town. He walked into the desert, searching for answers. The mesa loomed in the fading light, its ridges like teeth biting at the sky. He remembered the cave where the vultures had once hidden silver, the laughter of men drunk on greed, and Caleb's warning that every treasure demanded blood. Emily waited by the window, her shawl wrapped tight. When Ryder returned, dust streaking his boots, she saw the weight he carried. She moved to him without a word, her hand resting gently on his arm. For a moment, they stood close, silence drawing them together more surely than speech. His gaze softened, if only for a heartbeat. That night, the town gathered at the saloon again. Caleb appeared in the doorway, his hat low, his eyes searching until they locked on Ryder. The room stilled. Emily's heart clenched as she saw the flicker of recognition between them. Not just enemies, but brothers split by choices too deep to mend. Caleb stepped forward, his voice low but carrying. Silas was only a stone in the river. The current runs deeper. You know it. Ryder. His words struck like a lash, pulling old scars into the open. Ryder stiffened, but before he could reply, the crowd erupted, shouting questions, doubts, and accusations. Emily reached for Ryder's hand, her fingers closing over his with quiet insistence. Her touch held him steady as the voices swirled. Ben pressed against her side, small and frightened. For the first time, she felt the weight of leading not only her child, but perhaps the whole town through shadows thicker than the desert night. The twist came not in Caleb's words alone, but in what he carried. From his coat, he produced a folded map, edges worn, ink faded but still legible. He let it fall on the saloon table. The mark of Gray Mesa gleamed beneath the lantern light, a secret not buried, but waiting to be claimed again. The saloon doors swung wide at dawn. Word spread fast, carried on every breath of the desert wind. A new gang had ridden into the valley. They called themselves the Blackthorn Riders, and their black banners bore a mark of twisted branches. Their arrival shattered the uneasy silence left after Caleb's warning. Farmers left tools idle, merchants closed shutters, and children were called indoors. Emily watched from her window as dust rose on the horizon, silhouettes of horsemen moving like shadows over firelight. Ryder stood at the edge of town, his coat heavy with dust, eyes narrow. He knew these men by reputation, organized, merciless, more disciplined than the desperados had ever been. They were not scavengers. They were wolves hunting by design. The riders entered Dry Creek without firing a shot. Their leader, a tall figure with raven black hair and a scar running across his cheek, dismounted in the square. His voice carried easily. "We ride in the name of Silas Kane. His blood may be gone, but his legacy remains." Emily held Ben close, his small fingers clutching at her skirt. The townsfolk shifted uneasily, uncertain whether to resist or bow. Ryder's hand rested near his revolver. Though he did not move, he studied the leader, a man who spoke like he already owned the town. Then came the whisper that broke Ryder's resolve. Sheriff Clay had been seen among them, not dead, not forgotten, but standing at the leader's side, his badge tarnished yet still visible on his chest. The sight was worse than betrayal. It was a declaration that law itself had been sold. Emily's breath caught. She remembered the day Clay had promised to protect Dry Creek, his hand raised in oath. Now he stood armored by shadows, his eyes cold as stone. A murmur of despair rolled through the crowd. If law rode with Blackthorn, what chance did they have? Ryder turned away, jaw clenched, rage simmering beneath his calm. Emily touched his arm gently, grounding him. Their eyes met, the brief exchange enough to remind him that anger alone would burn them all. He exhaled slowly, the storm within contained for now. That evening, the townsfolk gathered in secret at the old barn. Voices rose in fear and anger. Some demanded surrender. Others whispered escape. Emily stood among them, her shawl wrapped tight, the target of suspicious glances. "She killed Silas," one man muttered. "Now his men come for us." Ryder stepped forward, his presence silencing the room. "They come for more than vengeance," he said, voice low. "They come for Gray Mesa, for what lies beneath it." The name sent a ripple through the barn. Few understood, but all felt the weight of it. After the meeting, Emily unrolled the bundle of papers her father had left her. The deed to her land, brittle with age, carried markings she had never noticed before. Ryder leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers as they studied the faded ink. There, hidden in the script, was a seal marking rights not just to land, but to the underground springs beneath the valley. Water, the true lifeblood of the desert. Emily's heart pounded. She looked at Ryder, her lips parted as realization dawned. It's not just silver. It's this. Control the water, and you control everything. Ryder's gaze held hers. The truth was more dangerous than bullets. He reached out, steadying her hand as it trembled over the parchment. "Then they won't stop until they have it," he said. His touch lingered a moment longer. Quiet reassurance in a storm. The next days turned the town into a board of strategy. Blackthorn Riders patrolled openly, demanding tribute, their presence suffocating. Sheriff Clay enforced their will with twisted smiles, turning neighbors into informants. Fear spread like wildfire. Emily walked the streets, head high despite the whispers. Ryder shadowed her steps, his silent guard. At the well, a woman hissed. "Death follows her." Emily ignored it, though the words carved deep. Ryder saw her shoulders tense, and without thinking, he reached for her hand. She let it rest in his, just for a heartbeat, drawing strength in silence. Ben stayed close, listening more than speaking. He caught fragments of conversations, men speaking of tunnels under Gray Mesa, of maps carried by Caleb Vance, of a war brewing not just for silver, but for survival itself. He told his mother in hushed words at night, his eyes wide with both fear and pride. One evening, flames lit the horizon. A farmstead outside town had been burned, its family scattered. Blackthorn had made their move, showing strength without mercy. Emily pressed Ben close as the smoke curled over the mesa. Ryder stood rigid, fists clenched, the weight of choice pressing harder each day. The twist came quietly, in whispers carried by the wind. Someone within the Riders had begun asking about Emily by name, not as an enemy, but as a key, her deed, her land, her springs. She was no longer a bystander. She was the prize. Ryder realized too late that the Riders' siege was not only about terror, it was a hunt, and Emily was the center of the trap. The siege began at dawn. Blackthorn Riders closed every road leading in and out of Dry Creek. Their horses stamped the dust into clouds. Their rifles gleamed in the rising sun. From the rooftops, townsfolk watched in silence, hearts hammering with dread. Ryder stood at the center of town, his coat flapping in the dry wind. Caleb Vance appeared from the opposite side, his dark figure cutting through the haze. For the first time since their split, they faced one another not as ghosts of memory, but as men bound by the same threat. Emily gathered the townspeople near the well. Her shawl slipped from her shoulders, her face pale but resolute. She held the deed in her hand, its faded ink now clear under the morning light. "This land," she said firmly, "and the springs beneath it, belong to us. No gang, no sheriff bought in shadows, can claim it." A ripple of murmurs spread. Some stared in awe, others in fear. By speaking, she had placed herself in the crosshairs of Blackthorn's ambition. Ryder's stomach tightened. He moved closer, his hand brushing her arm, grounding her. Their eyes met briefly, steady as if drawing strength from one another. The leader of Blackthorn dismounted in the square, his scarred face twisted into a grin. Bold words for a woman already marked. "You hold paper, but we hold guns." He lifted his hand, and riders fanned out, rifles trained on the crowd. Caleb stepped forward, rifle slung casually over his shoulder. His voice cut sharp. "If you want this town, you'll ride through me." His eyes flicked to Ryder, a silent truce forged in necessity. Ryder gave the smallest nod, revolver ready at his side. Gunfire shattered the air. The square erupted in chaos. Townsfolk scattered into doorways, clutching children and pulling shutters closed. Dust rose thick, swallowing light, swallowing breath. Ryder moved like instinct, revolver flashing in the haze. Caleb's rifle cracked beside him, dropping riders with precise strikes. For a fleeting moment, the old rhythm returned, the same deadly harmony they had once shared under darker banners. Emily darted through the crowd, clutching Ben to her. She spotted barrels stacked near the saloon oil, set by Blackthorn as a trap to burn the town once taken. Her chest seized. If a spark reached them, Dry Creek would be ash by noon. She shoved Ben toward an older woman, her voice fierce. "Take him. Keep him safe." Then she turned back, skirts whipping in the wind, determination hardening her every step. She ran for the barrels and slipping between gunfire and shouts. Ryder saw her movement through the dust and his heart froze. "Emily," he roared, firing twice to clear her path. She ducked low, tearing free a lantern Blackthorn had planted. With trembling hands, she smashed it against stone, dousing flame before it could spread. The leader of Blackthorn spotted her. His eyes narrowed, fury twisting his scar. He strode through the gunfire, drawing his blade, intent on cutting her down. Ryder intercepted him, steel meeting steel, revolver lost in the melee. Their duel drew the eye of all. Ryder's fists swung heavy, his body straining, while the leader countered with ruthless precision. Each blow rang like iron, echoing off wooden facades. Caleb covered their flanks, rifle thundering, but even he could not break the clash apart. Emily stumbled back, breath ragged, her palms raw from shattered glass. She felt the weight of every gaze, the knowledge that her stand had ignited more than resistance. It had made her the fulcrum of survival. Her knees weakened, but she refused to fall. Ben's cries pierced the chaos, reaching her ears. She turned, saw him struggling in the arms of the woman shielding him, his small face wet with tears. Her heart clenched, but she forced herself forward, mind sharp. If the barrels exploded, no one, not Ryder, not Ben, would live. She scrambled to the barrels, tearing at ropes, rolling them into the dust. Her fingers bled, but she worked until her arms ached. Sparks from stray gunfire hissed nearby, each one a thread of fire. She prayed silently, lips moving without sound. In the square, Ryder fought on. The Blackthorn leader swung hard, blade grazing his side. Ryder staggered, blood darkening his shirt. Emily gasped, but he steadied himself, eyes burning with defiance. He drove forward, fists like hammers, until at last he wrenched the blade free and turned it back. The man fell hard, his grin fading into the dust. Silence rippled outward as riders faltered. Their leader struck down. Caleb seized the moment, shouting, "This ends now." His rifle barked again, scattering the last of Blackthorn's charge. Emily collapsed against a barrel, chest heaving, palms torn and bleeding. Ryder stumbled to her, breath ragged, side slick with blood. He dropped beside her, his hand finding hers, gripping tight. Their foreheads brushed, silence binding them more than words. Ben broke free, running to them, flinging his arms around his mother's waist. Emily pulled him close, tears streaking her dust-stained face. Ryder's hand rested gently on Ben's shoulder. The three of them locked together in fragile triumph. But not all shadows lifted. Sheriff Clay vanished in the chaos, his badge left glinting in the dirt like a discarded oath. And from the fallen leader's coat, Emily noticed something slip free, a seal pressed in black wax, marking a letter unopened. She picked it up with trembling fingers. The wax bore a symbol she had never seen, something older, darker than Blackthorn. She met Ryder's eyes, her voice breaking into a whisper. This wasn't just about Silas or the Riders. Ryder's jaw tightened. He said nothing, but the weight of unspoken truth hung heavy between them. Caleb lingered at the edge of the square, his shadow long in the fading sun. He tipped his hat once, then turned away, vanishing into the dust. The town stood in ruins, yet unburned. Survivors gathered slowly, eyes shifting between Emily, Ryder, and the letter sealed in black. Hope mingled with unease, for they knew the battle had been won, but the war had only begun. The smoke of battle drifted slowly across Dry Creek. Broken shutters hung from windows, the square littered with spent shells and blood-darkened dust. The town had survived, but its silence felt heavier than the gunfire that had shaken it hours before. Emily sat by the well, her palms wrapped in torn cloth. Ben clung to her side, his small face pressed into her dress. Ryder leaned against the stone wall, his shirt stained where the blade had cut him, but his eyes steady on her. Townsfolk emerged one by one. Some carried buckets of water to douse embers. Others gathered the wounded. Yet their glances lingered on Emily, hesitant, uncertain. She had saved them, but the fear in their eyes told her victory had not erased suspicion. Caleb lingered only a moment longer. His dark hat shadowed his face as he mounted his horse. He looked toward Ryder with a flicker of something respect, regret, or both. Then he turned without a word, vanishing down the road in a cloud of dust. Emily's breath caught as she watched him go. Ryder's hand brushed her shoulder, grounding her as her thoughts swirled. For all his silence, his touch spoke clearly. Caleb's shadow would return one day. By nightfall, lanterns glowed weakly through cracked glass. The saloon stood empty, its doors ajar, chairs overturned. The people of Dry Creek gathered near the well, voices hushed. They looked not at Ryder, nor the sheriff's abandoned badge, but at Emily, as though expecting her to explain what came next. She drew Ben close and lifted the parchment deed once more. "This land is ours," she said quietly, "and the water beneath it. If we stand together, no one can take it from us." Her words carried more hope than certainty, but the crowd leaned in, clinging to them as if they were lifelines. Ryder stepped forward, his presence anchoring her. His voice was low but firm. "Standing together is the only way we've got. If we falter, others will come, and worse than Blackthorn." The murmur that followed was not cheers, but weary assent. Later, when the square emptied, only the three of them remained by the well. Ben sat on the stone rim, legs swinging, his small hand reaching for Ryder's. Ryder took it, and for the first time, the boy did not flinch. Emily's heart softened at the sight, her eyes shimmering. The night was quiet, but not gentle. Emily pulled a small envelope from her shawl, the letter sealed in black wax. She had hidden it from the townsfolk, knowing fear would splinter them further. Now she held it between trembling fingers, its weight greater than iron. Ryder watched her carefully. "You don't have to open it tonight," he said, but his voice betrayed his own unease. He knew, as she did, that the truth would not wait. Emily traced the seal with her thumb. The symbol carved into the wax was unlike any she had seen, intertwining shapes, old and cruel. A shiver passed through her, though the air was still. She pressed it back into her shawl, unable to break it yet. Ben leaned against her, eyelids heavy. She kissed his hair, whispering promises of safety. Ryder lowered himself beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, his warmth a quiet anchor. For a moment, the world narrowed to three figures by a well, bound together by love and exhaustion. But beyond the square, shadows lingered. Tracks of Blackthorn horses led out of town, yet the dust they left behind felt like a trail to something larger. Sheriff Clay was gone, carrying secrets with him, and the letter, unopened, pulsed like a silent heart in Emily's grasp. Ryder looked at the stars scattered above the mesa. His jaw tightened. "This isn't over," he murmured. Emily turned to him, her hand finding his, squeezing gently. "No," she answered. "It's only begun." The wind stirred then, lifting dust into the lantern light. It swirled around them, whispering through the streets of Dry Creek, carrying echoes of a battle survived and the promise of darker trials yet to come. This was another chapter from WestDreamTales. The dust may settle, but the story never ends. Subscribe, share your thoughts below, and ride with us into the next tale of the frontier.